Recording in progress.
Good evening and welcome to the September 27th, 2021 Kingston City Land Bank Public Board Meeting. This board meeting is being held exclusively on Zoom, and we welcome questions and comments from members of the public, but we ask that you limit your speaking time to 2 minutes per speaker. For that, I'll turn it over to Daniel Cantor, our board chair.
Hi, everybody. Welcome. Exciting month. Can we real fast just vote to adopt last month's meeting minutes? They are included in the board.
I make a motion to accept August 20-something meeting minutes.
23rd.
Okay.
All in favor of accepting August meeting minutes? Oppose, abstain, motion passes. Thank you, everybody. All right, so exciting as a busy, active month. Big exciting news. The Kingston City Land Bank has received our first certificate of occupancy on our first completed rehab. So huge thank you to Maida Contracting, as well as Owen and Mike and Erica and all of you for getting that over the finish line. It's a really cute house. Anytime someone wants to walk through it, let us know. On that note, also extremely exciting, we are 3 for 3 on executed sales contracts for all 3 homes. They are expected to close by the end of the year. I have now met 2 of the 3 buyers. They are wonderful and really super excited, and it's very cool. It makes it all real. So that's incredibly exciting. We have also purchased another property, 29 Rogers Street. It's a pretty cool, super rough house in the Rondout area. And so it may or may not be part of next year's rehab lineup, but either way, it's a really good property and will make a great home for somebody. On that note, we continue to pursue the Legacy Cities grant. So in this month, we walked through all of the possible homes, of which I think there's 6. And the goal is to pick 5 that we would be rehabbing under that program. So it's a joint ventureship with a BIPOC developer. Super cool program. Mike can speak much more to the details than I can, but it would renovate some houses next year, which would be very cool. We had our first kind of big brainstorm fundraising meeting, which was very fun. Thank you guys for coming. And I think we got a lot done and kind of recalibrated our goals for next year, which this year, which Karin will talk more about. But there's some cool things on the agenda that Karin and Omari and Aneshka are really spearheading and greatly appreciate it. So what else? 63 German. I can't remember if this was this month or last month, but let's pretend at least that it was this month. Got a big landscaping clean out, which was much needed, and the neighbors are very happy to see done. We have also, last month, we voted on the contract to award for the interior clean out. That is still in the process of being scheduled. It would appear that a check got lost in the mail or something, so we're managing that. We have been in active conversation over the final kind of lump of properties that we requested back in April to just have a little bit more time to evaluate. 29 Rogers was one of those, so we've now purchased it. And there's just a few that we're having active conversation about, and we'll be talking about, I think, at the next acquisition and disposition committee, and then sort of talking to the whole board so that we can make decisions together about those outstanding parcels. Otherwise, over at 248 Main, things are proceeding slowly but surely. The house will be done soon. Dear God, please. Same thing with 174 Hasbrook. The Kingston Design Show House designers are active, and I was there today. Meyer Contracting, who's the contracting firm for that house, is behind schedule. So unfortunately, things are sort of overlapping, and that's not how this was intended to work, but everybody's gonna get through it, and it's still gonna be cool. And to Katie, Kingston Design Connections credit, they are doing exactly what they said they were gonna do in the time frame that they're doing it, and being very accommodating around what are delays outside of our control, but also kind of still our responsibility. So they're good partners. In other news, so I've spoken to both Aneshka and Karin. As I think everybody knows, they are departing from the board at the end of the year, sadly, but for good reasons. And so just as the year is wrapping up, we've sort of all come to the conclusion that everything's becoming a lot for both of them, and it would probably be best if they step down from those from their officer positions. So Karin is treasurer and Aneshka is vice chair. So our thought is that at the October board meeting, we'll do like a little special election just to fill both of those roles by the end of the year. For the last 2 months of the year, we'll still do our regular annual officer elections in January, but just to kind of make sure we have like full engagement and everybody paying attention. I think that's probably the best way to go. So think about over the next month if you would like to run for either of those positions just for 2 months, and maybe continue next year when we do this again in January. So that's that. And I don't think, yeah, so we also, I think 2 months ago, created a compensation committee to discuss next year's contracts and at the time I appointed officers just across the board because that was easy and they tend to have the most contact with our consultants. So for the time being, I think what makes sense, Karin is going to remain on the committee, I think, if she's willing. And Aneshka is not, and I would like to appoint Bob to that role. Bob has been, I would say, uniquely helpful in contract negotiations across the board, including with our contractors, and I think will be a valuable asset on that committee as we settle on contracts for our staff roles next year. So I think that's everything I have. And now there's a public comments period, but we don't have any. So I guess, are there any questions or should we go right into Mike's report?
Do we have to mention our locations?
Oh my God, yes, I think we're still supposed to do that. I'm sorry. I'll go first. Daniel Cantor, board chair. I am at 142 Clinton Avenue. Bartek.
Bartek Stardai, 354 South Wall Street.
Alana.
Ilana Berger, 146 Franklin Street.
Bob.
Bob Dennison, 122 Wilson Avenue.
Karin.
Karin Rue, 70 Stefan Street.
Aneshka.
Aneshka Shebek, 259 Beale Street.
Mayor Noble.
101 Wilson Avenue.
Serena Pepper from the car.
I'm in the Upper East Side of Manhattan.
Gotcha. Omari.
Omari Washington, 49 Greenkill Avenue.
Okay, thank you, everybody. And thank you for reminding me because I absolutely forgot. All right, Mike, tell us good news.
Great. I'd be happy to. Good evening, everyone. Maybe just to fill in a couple gaps or talk through some of the more pre-development side of things. We currently have 10 properties that are under pre-development. This includes the 29 Rogers, which will, as Daniel mentioned, will have the documents filed and will be closing soon. Thank you to the City of Kingston for seeing that through to really get us over the hump for that closing. It's every closing is different in a different type of way in some respects. So that's just another piece of the puzzle. In other news, under this category, the lawns are being mowed, and thank you to Owen for settling the snow removal contract, which is now settled. So unlike last year, where we settled the snow the day the snow started, now we have the snow removal contract set. So that helps me sleep a little better at night. We did also receive the first tranche of title reports that were conducted by the city for us to review for the next evaluation of properties beyond the list of 36. So we've received 10, for which we are evaluating, and we're grateful for that, and are told that we'll receive another 6 next week. So that process is moving forward. Daniel mentioned the cleanouts. Thanks again to Owen for that. We're putting together an RFP for the houses that have not been cleaned out yet, excluding 63 German. So stay tuned for that. We should have some updates next month on that process. The Henry Street RFP, which the Acquisition Disposition Committee, I believe, is reviewing now or has taken a look at, is ready to go. I don't have any definitive updates on when we may acquire, but as soon as we do, I think that will be happening soon, honestly. We're just working out the final details. And then as soon as we do, we'll be ready to issue that RFP. So that should be, I hope, by next meeting, we'll have that settled and then put that out as our first sort of pathway 3/pathway 4/we shall see stabilized property RFP. So that is exciting. Owen, would you mind maybe giving just kind of some general updates about where you think we are in terms of the pilot and maybe phase 2?
Sure, absolutely. So as Daniel mentioned, we got the C of O on the first house, 64 Van Buren, and that house is also, in addition to having the C of O, is done. We really don't have other scope to do there, or they finished all their punch list items. We are just finishing our closeout paperwork process with that contractor, but that's also going smoothly. We each did the math on what we owe each other, and we were $1 off. So it's just been very smooth wrapping up that process with that contractor. So that's awesome. Hasbrook, we did a punch list walkthrough on Hasbrook, and I would say had relatively good agreement about what remained to be done. The biggest thing was getting the boiler installed and wrapping up that scope. And I'm much relaxed to have the boilers installed, and they were finishing the gas piping today. So I really think they're going to be wrapping up what we agreed to on the punch list on that house, and that's great. So I'm going to be walking through on Friday to go through the punch list and check that everything's been done. But the idea is that Meyer's out of the house at the end of the week, and then it's Kingston Design Show House continues their work to finish up that house. I guess I just also wanted to say generally, I don't know who's gotten to see that house, but it's really it's nice to see it finally at a point where it's that was not a great house, and it's now a nice, it's now, you can tell it's going to be a nice house in the end. So that's nice to see the transformation. This is, so we really pushed Meyer to make sure they're focusing their efforts on getting out of Hasbrook, but now they're on to getting their subs to wrap up their work at Main Street. And we're going to do a punch list walkthrough on Wednesday, probably a couple days premature, but that's how it's working out. And then their punch list is going to be due on October 8th. So yeah, that still feels on track to our commitments to having C of O by and all scope finished by the end of October. We are in the middle of the RFP is open for the next 2 houses, and we're poking the contractors. We had a good response on the walkthroughs. I think we had 13 positive responses and maybe 10 or 11 show up. And I think we're going to have we'll have a diet, we'll have less people produce qualified responses for the proposals, but I think we're going to get some decent proposals, and we're just poking them to make sure they keep thinking about it. And we continue to work with KDA, the architects, to finish the set. So we're going to issue a revision before the RFP is due. Those are probably my updates. Any questions?
I have one, Owen.
Yeah.
The bids that you've received so far and those who came to the walkthrough, do you know like approximately how many of them are from the Ulster County or Mid-Hudson area? Mid-Hudson region?
Yeah, for the contractors,
Yeah.
they're all from the Hudson Valley area. We haven't received any proposals so far, but everybody that walked through is from the Hudson Valley area.
Great.
And they have to be nearby enough that they can reasonably deploy here and work for 6 months. But
Sure.
yeah.
I've just heard wild stories of contractors like driving 2 hours each way and, from out of state for other jobs, nothing related to the land bank, but it was just, I don't know if it's just that there's a desperation for those kinds of jobs, but that just sort of led me to ask. But that's really encouraging. That's great to hear they're all from the Mid-Hudson area.
Yeah,
or the Hudson Valley area.
Everybody's definitely under an hour commute for sure.
Cool.
Don't be
Thanks.
alarmed that we haven't received proposals. They're not due for another 10 days.
Oh no, yeah, they're not due till the 15th of October. So yeah.
We have time.
No reason to panic.
Well, thank you, Owen.
Sure.
And I know you have to jump off the call, so thank you for joining, and thanks
Yeah.
for doing this.
Thank you.
So just to get through any construction updates that weren't picked up, I don't think there are any, but to reiterate, we have the C of O on 64 Van Buren. We're anticipating in November to achieve the C of O on 248 Main, and December for the C of O on 174 Hasbrook. And so that leads into the sales updates. I won't mention anything that hasn't already been mentioned, other than just to reiterate that it's really exciting that we are at this point. And I hope we all start to think around like what this could look like in terms of celebrating when families move in. So I think that's just like a to be continued type of thing, but there's probably a lot of different permutations, but we've received people trying to help out with donating various things to kind of like a move-in care package type of thing. It's all sort of loosey-goosey at this point, but it's really exciting. So also we have the next round of sales and marketing that will eventually commence at a to be determined date, but probably this year. And so around that, just to give an update around finding additional resources to help us with that from an in-house standpoint. There's nothing specific to note, but we are continuing to talk to folks, and the conversation's ongoing, and we're just trying to find the right resources that could help us out with that. We'll move down to the funding section. So on actually the 1st of September, we submitted our proposal to the Nova Foundation, both for 2022 operating and for the acquisition of properties next year. It's worth noting that the contemplated acquisition price includes the full value of back taxes. So we're still Although there, I believe, hopefully are kind of some ongoing discussions around what that could look like. We're anticipating that will be something that we continue to do. So that's what the Nova Foundation is evaluating now, and they haven't given us any feedback, but we hope to have some next Thursday. Would be the first time we've really heard, other than to say that it looks good and everything seemed very positive. Thank you, Erica, for finalizing the public charities test to help secure the grant. I neglected to mention that last month, but it's a rabbit hole to go down what that actually means, but it was a test that Novo asked us to perform in anticipation of them approving the grant. So that was a big piece of the puzzle. And it just wanted to celebrate that and note her participation in it. And then the only other update I guess I would have under the other category would be the article I'd sent around about the county using their existing vehicle to do like a land bank adjacent type of development structure to work on 4 parcels that they have identified that are not in Kingston. So that's my update on the conversation with the county. And that's it for me.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Committee reports. Bob.
Daniel, can I just totally non sequitur, my big apologies, but if anyone's near a window, just look out the window because the sunset is really beautiful. Just a little momentary sunset break.
Thank you. We need that.
Never better than the Hudson Valley. Come on. Acquisition and disposition. I'll go through this pretty quickly. The first order of business, and I'm gonna suggest to Daniel that he ask for a motion or ask to vote on this. The committee discussed the proposals to develop a grant program to be administered by the land bank, which were submitted in response to our RFP last month. We sent out an RFP asking for this in response to Novo's request that we develop some sort of a system to make grants. And we received 2 proposals. The Acquisition and Disposition Committee reviewed the proposals and recommend that Forsyth Street Advisors, which was really a very sound proposal. And they were quite impressive with what they have done in the past. We awarded a contract not to exceed 40,000. I think their proposal was 35,000 off the top of my head, but I wanted to give a little room in there. And the work would commence in January of 2020. They would pass the committee passed it with a three in favor and one abstention. And I would suggest that we might want to pass it as a board to award the contract to Forsyth Street to develop this program for grants. So I'll leave that in your capable hands at this point, Daniel.
I wish you wouldn't. It might bear some more. Mike, would you maybe speak to kind of the intention behind this and what sorts of things they might, be developing?
Be happy to. So the genesis of this idea, I think, started quite some time ago, maybe even before I got involved in the land bank, with the concept of trying to do as many different avenues we thought we could be successful along in providing affordable housing opportunities. So in thinking about that, we came up with the 4 pathways, which are different ways that will move properties that we acquire through our pipeline and put those back on the tax rolls and hopefully achieve affordable housing through that route. One of the additional avenues that was discussed early on with the Nova Foundation was the possibility of administering some direct grant subsidy. So this is not us rehabbing properties or even acquiring properties necessarily, but it would be an opportunity to provide a direct financial incentive to produce affordable housing. I have some thoughts around permutations that this could look like, but I think the feedback that we got that was very well received from the Nova Foundation was, why don't we bring in someone with experience, structured experience, putting together this type of a program to see what's available, to do a very deep dive into data points that would be relevant to the type of affordable housing or the type of buildings that could be turned into affordable housing, or the types of other developments that are going on that could utilize additional subsidy. to produce affordable housing at a lower level. Those were the types of conversations that led us to put the RFP together, and the response that we received back, I think, dovetails almost perfectly into that. This is a group that is head and shoulders really considered to be the national expert in affordable housing financial consulting, both from a municipal level and for-profit and nonprofit organizations. It's a long-winded way of saying I believe this is another avenue that we could tap into without too much resource strain to all of us to produce a program that allows others to work with us in partnership and produce more affordable housing. Yes. There's a question, Mayor Noble.
Just to clarify the resolution, would this be resolution of awarding this contract be contingent on us receiving funds from Novo to do this work, or do we already have the $40,000 in hand at this point?
So great question. Thank you for asking it. The operating line that was passed in the, the consultant's line that was passed in the operating budget for this year includes an assumption for this amount to pay for the consultant next year. I won't speak for Erica about us having cash in hand currently to fund this for unreserved cash. We certainly have just booked the first 3 sales from the sale of the home. So on an accrual basis, I believe she would say there is funding, certainly unrestricted funding, certainly available to make this decision. However, it's contemplated that we would not start paying until January, and that would be after we've learned about hopefully the success of our grant proposal to pay for it.
I guess maybe to clarify even further, is this $35,000, $40,000 in our proposal, in our proposed budget for Novo as part of our next round of grant making that they may do? So yeah, so I would just add that maybe I would probably feel more comfortable if we added a caveat to that, basically stating that as long as, you know, we are awarded, you know, funding, you know, that this would make sense. I would probably myself feel a little bit like if we didn't receive this as part of a grant, that I don't know if I'd feel as comfortable moving forward with it. Because then we wouldn't have, there'd really be no reason to build a program if we don't have any capital to put into that program ourselves. So
I think it's a really excellent point, and I think one of the components that should be addressed is that what this 35 to 40,000 is to simply establish what that program would be, right? And that is to be included in that total 400,000 from the budget that we have submitted to Novo as sort of operating budget expenses. And then any money to actually implement the program, which would be entirely separate from establishing, that would come and would not be funneled through Forsyth Consultants. I'm so sorry, I don't have their full name in front of me, but that would be entirely separate. And so no program would actually be implemented unless we had either outside funding or the board determined that there was enough funding to pull together that this was a priority to spend that money on. But that would be an entirely separate conversation. I mean, my impression was that Bob is asking, right, for approval of just to establish the program, or like how that program would operate.
Just to create the mechanism to give grants.
Like a template, basically.
Right, but
how
not
it
to
would
give
work.
grants. Right, not to give
Okay.
grants. Right.
And to our knowledge, I think it is important to include in whatever you know, motion or resolution tonight that it is contingent upon receiving funds from Novo to support that, like Mayor noted.
Or individual donation. We'll
No, we have other goals for that.
Oh, that was mostly a joke.
I know.
Yeah, I think the part of the context here is these programs, I think we're trying to do things that are fairly innovative, that expand our reach beyond, our fairly small inventory of properties. It's a complicated task that has to do a lot with complying with laws and real property tax law. And so this is not work that we have the capacity to do internally. I think it is based on the general assumption that, once something like this is sort of roadmapped and set up, that we would probably be adding another staff member, part-time, full-time, not sure, to actually administer and probably assist with other things that are, becoming a lot of work for our slim personnel.
If I could, I don't know what the overhead would look like from a resource standpoint to the land bank, but I think the goal would be to set something up that was pretty low maintenance in terms of there would be process and approvals and funding and legal documents that were already set up and kind of boilerplate. I believe that's the goal for the outcome, rather than to have it be something that requires a lot of maintenance and discussion, because I believe everybody kind of understands where we're at in terms of our resources. So my goal would be not to make this turn into another full-time position or even additional resources.
So the opposite of what I just
It's just a thought.
I'll stop.
Just my thought. Could be wrong.
Well, I think however it shakes out, it seems like a great potential to really leverage, expertise and things that the land bank can offer to affordable housing work being done by others, and to be able to sort of be if I understand it correctly, to kind of be like a keystone in a sense, of providing funding at a critical point for others to be able to complete affordable housing work. If I understand.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. Okay.
Kind of the part that maybe is going without saying, but probably should be said, is like, our existing model has so far essentially consisted of the pilot program, which is a very expensive program to run. It's a very cool program and a good thing and all of that. But I think this is a way that we can leverage essentially the same resources, but stretch it quite a bit further is the intention, part of the intention. So
May I ask a question about this idea of establishing a trust fund? That sounds, like it's going to involve some legal dollars as well to set up financial structures, etc. And then what I'm wondering about, which is always what I sort of try to push for, is this going to then be administered somehow to give people who say need dollars to revive a property, restore a property, the wherewithal to do so, or to amplify their budgets to do so? Is that kind of the thought behind it all?
I think that's one part of the spectrum of what it could include. I don't
Okay.
know for sure exactly what all the permutations would be, but that's why I think it's good to bring in the experts and ask them what they think.
Yeah, the only reason I'm asking is that trusts are usually complicated instruments. So I'm just, I'm just saying, obviously our lawyer has to be involved, and all of that kind of thinking has to go into it to establish it. It's not only their consultancy that we're going to be paying for, in other words.
Probably true. I will say the Affordable Housing Trust Fund term is just kind of like a generic placeholder, and it's more on the fund. The emphasis is more on fund than trust. It's just a.
And our lawyer, by the way, is on a fixed retainer, so
Yep.
asking him to do things such as set up an LLC or et cetera, or he is generously included in a low retainer for a very high caliber lawyer. So we're very lucky to have Brian.
That's good to know. Do we need to propose a motion to,
Sorry. Just gonna say, this sounds
Mark.
good to me. But I just had a question about how this might intersect with the work that the city is doing. So I'm not sure, I know I heard about the Director of Housing Initiatives that had started a few months ago, but I haven't heard much about what the city's plan is for affordable housing and if that would be kind of in line with what this is proposing.
At least from our perspective, there are barriers to the city giving grant money directly to homeowners for a variety of different municipal law reasons. So there's certain times that we can, like when we receive grant funds from other institutions, we can re-gift those funds in the form of grants. We have some funding from the state to be able to do some grants to homeowners, we think, and through some anti-displacement funding that we've received. And so I would expect a program like similar to this possibly could roll out. But I think that the funding is kind of, every grantor has their own requirements. And so, we kind of take the programs that we're given and we kind of interact with them. I think here it seems like you guys are going to be trying to develop a program that kind of fits a need that exists without any of those boundaries, kind of creating your own boundaries. And I think that would probably differentiate this program from any of the programs that the city or the state or RUPCO already provide, because there are housing grants that all of those different organizations provide already in Kingston. But I think that there are people that fall through the cracks. There are people that have incomes that may be too low or too high. And I think that that's really what this consultant would try to figure out for us is, how could we develop a program that could actually maybe be even more meaningful than some of the existing resources that are already out there on the market.
Yeah, thanks. Appreciate that. Yeah, and I was wondering too, because I feel like I read in their proposal that a lot of this will be some fact finding and really figuring out where's the synergy between different projects. So just wondering if the city would, it seems like the city would benefit from, what they're going to discover. And just wanted to make sure, I'm guessing that's the whole point of this is to kind of connect some of the dots, but yeah.
I agree, Omari. I think it can be like a force multiplier for everything that exists and kind of connect or add where necessary if we identify gaps and things like that. I'm excited to see it develop in that way.
So I think it seems like we could entertain a motion to enter into contract with Forsyth Street Advisors for this program starting in 2022 at a not to exceed $40,000 contingent upon our ability to pay for it, our receipt of funding to cover that cost. Does that sound like the right motion I was supposed to entertain?
yeah, I don't know how to repeat it because it's very long, but
Just-
I propose a motion to work with Forsyth Street, or Forsyth, what are they? I always have to look their
Street
name up.
Advisors.
Yes, Forsyth Street Advisors, as Daniel just proposed.
I'll second.
All in favor of that proposal?
Hi.
Oppose, abstain, motion passes unanimously. Thank you. That is exciting. I think it's gonna be super cool. Bob, is there more?
There's always more, but it'll be very brief. We got an update on the property acquisition activities. We got an update on the responses to the RFP for the last 2 house renovations and the house tours. And we got an update on the sales of the 3 houses that were underway. But the important part, as we discussed some preliminary ideas for next year as part of our operating plan for 2022. And I'll just briefly mention them just to start the conversation because we have a couple of months to figure this stuff out. One is to develop a formalized process for deciding on properties to be acquired, documented with a written plan for each property that includes a budget developed in concert with the finance committee, and making that a requirement before we acquire property. That's for 2022, maybe aspirational goal. Second thing is develop a plan to engage the city council members in our activities with an eye towards streamlining the process for the land bank to acquire properties from the city. And the third aspirational goal, which are to be developed, these are just conversation points at this point, is to develop a defensible process to enable the land bank to sell houses to members of groups within the community that are presently and have been historically underrepresented in home ownership in the city of Kingston. And that's an ambitious thing to undertake, but it would be consistent with the typical requirements of a minority business enterprise kind of approach, or disadvantaged business enterprise kind of approach that the state uses to justify and defend, in essence, their disadvantaged business enterprise and minority and women business enterprise programs. So that's an ambitious goal to think about, but I think it's something we want to think about for next year. And that was all for acquisition and disposition. Does anybody have any questions? Either I lost everybody completely or I was absolutely clear. I'm going to vote on the first thing.
What is kind of thought on that, your final aspirational goal of conveying homes to more members of marginalized communities? I recall that there had been an earlier discussion, maybe even in the very early days, right, of the land bank about doing this, well before my time, but that there were potentially legal issues associated with the land bank doing that directly. But I've wondered since then if there's a way for the land bank as a public authority to convey homes to another not-for-profit organization whose very direct mission is to support specifically people who are Black or the people of color, LGBTQ, like other marginalized communities, Indigenous peoples, like, has that entered the conversation? Like, I'm just wondering, as like a way of legally facilitating that without making things difficult for the land bank.
I would say that that's the kind of thing that would be thought about in this aspirational goal. I mean, there's all kinds of alternative ways to approach this. And I think we'd have to do it in consultation with our attorney to make sure we don't get crossways. But I think that would be one path to explore. Another path to explore is, looking at the historical stuff to justify preferential treatment for underrepresented elements of the community. I think there's a number of ways to look at it. And I think that's one. Yes, absolutely.
And I appreciate, Karen, you bringing up some thoughts, and if other people have ideas, it seems like we have some work to do to figure this out. So all brains and ideas are going to be helpful.
Yeah. Well, it would also, occur to me that those organizations would be working more directly within those communities and therefore might be better positioned to disperse those homes and that kind of thing, with the land bank kind of being a facilitator in a sense, a funnel, right? Like how the Newburgh City Land Bank, conveys a lot of homes to Habitat for Humanity. Like, it would be a different pathway for conveying homes to another organization that would be better suited and better able and legally better able to, without having it be as much of a legal uphill, not a moral or ethical or aspirational uphill. But
To my knowledge.
I love that that was raised as an aspirational goal. I'm so excited.
So to my knowledge, not to put a damn strong thing, but you know, we just like Habitat, just like Youth Build, just like Repco, just like anybody, are all bound by the same fair housing law and real property law that exists in the state and nationally. So I think where is more kind of actionable and helpful for us to focus is in the way that we're marketing these homes and who we're sort of reaching with that marketing. So I think we did a pretty good job on the first pass of, you know, making sure that things were translated into Spanish and trying to get the word out far and wide in as many avenues that we could. But that is, I think, typically the way that this is sort of accomplished is by being very strategic about, you know, where you're really putting your energy and resources in terms of marketing, in order to get the most applicants that sort of meet what you're trying to get to. I think the general. Mike, do I have that more or less right? But I guess the point being, it's not as though we can dispose of a property to a different organization and ask them to break the same law that we don't want to break, for lack of.
Thanks, Dan. I just want, as a member of the committee, want to appreciate, I believe that probably every stone has not been unturned. So before we say the only way to do this is our marketing, I hold out hope that there can be some really smart creative thinkers who might come up with some ideas. So I think the point of this is to really see what we can come up with, talk to people who are experts in this field, sort of maybe outside of some of the more traditional people we've talked to, and see what we come up with. And if we come up with nothing and it's impossible, then we will go from there. But entering the process, assuming there may be some really cool ideas out there that we just haven't yet found.
And on that note, Daniel, I'm done.
Always possible. You've wrapped up. Thank you. Finance and audit, sorry.
Thank you. Yeah, I think this will be pretty quick. We, you know, all the materials were sent out to you. We have been receiving funds from Novo and Enterprise, which is very nice to see those lines being populated. So for example, on the Novo we've actually now received the third of 3 payments from Novo. There are still some potential funds out there for any contingency expenses related to rehab costs that were budgeted, but then, you know, a little extra left over for just in case it went over. But as of right now, we have received the full $779,000 that was budgeted from Novo. We've received it doesn't show in this current budget because this is through August, but September 2nd, we did receive the second quarterly payment from Enterprise. So we're doing pretty well with our income. We are expecting larger project expenses in September that will show at our next board meeting because Meyer did not submit any invoices for August. So it'll sort of just look a little higher like it did, I think, back in between May and June, where Meyer didn't, for other reasons, didn't submit invoices, but will at a later date. So overall, we're doing fine. Everything's cooking along. Any questions? And that's very broad, and Erica I see has popped on for this section. She may wish to add anything, but from our finance and audit committee meeting, she and Mike and Owen are handling things well. Omari or Mayor Noble, if you have any other comments?
No, I think that you summed up everything really well. And I just want to thank Erica for her work and Karen for your work on keeping us all going on the finance committee.
It's really easy to do with such incredibly supportive staff, people working on it. So, and committee members. So thank you.
So I know, we weren't able to meet last month as finance committee, right? Or was it?
No, we met.
We met. Did we meet?
Did we meet?
I can't remember.
We
No,
met?
we didn't meet. You're right. You're right.
Notes from a meeting.
You're right. Sorry.
That's okay.
But in terms of submitting the budget for the ABO, is that
Going
out tomorrow morning.
Oh.
You beat me to it, Eric. Thank you.
But thank you for bringing that up. Yeah, it's due by September 30th. And Mike and I spoke about it on Friday. So I will make sure that goes out and everyone will get an email. I'm very excited to just say we're done with it for a little while with the ABO.
Great.
Thanks, Amari. I think we met. I'm pretty confident.
Yeah, well, I think we didn't meet for fundraising because we had
Yes.
the fundraising.
Yeah, there we go. Thought I was going nuts for a minute.
Which
Any other
is-
questions?
May, barring any questions. Fundraising committee.
Yeah, so we did not meet on our regularly scheduled day for fundraising because we had a meeting at Daniel's house, which was more of a broader strategic planning for the remainder of this year, at which it was Daniel and Mike and Omari and Aneshka and Erica, and it was just so wonderful to see everyone in person. Probably my first and only in-person meeting.
You
for
forgot
my-
Julie.
I was about to talk about Julie. No, so Julie was a volunteer, Julie Whalen, who came at Daniel's invitation, and she, gosh, if all points continue onward, will just be an extraordinary asset. So we talked about really initially focusing on this $30,000 goal that we have to help pay down, to split between the two remaining pilot homes, but the goal that 15,000 would go to each home to pay down that purchase price, and therefore sort of further deepen the affordability factor of each of those homes once they are made available. To date, so far, we have secured funds from two community foundations, one Ulster Savings Bank Foundation of Ulster Savings Bank, we're in the tune of $5,000. And then thank you to Serena and introduction to the Hudson Valley Youth Health Foundation. And I'm sorry, I will send out an email correcting those names, both of those, after this meeting. I apologize for that. So we have a total of $7,000 from foundations, and then individual donations have come in to the amount of $5,300 and change, which is the last figure that I received. So we talked about ways in which to continue trying to reach that goal of $30,000. We are going to time an event to coincide with the Kingston Design Connection event the first weekend. Omari was able to connect us with Kingston Standard. And so on October 9th, we will have a table at Kingston Standard. There will be literature at the Connection Home, on which we're hoping to be able to coordinate a little bit with the Kingston Design Connection folks, directing people to Kingston Standard, just sort of as an informational. And then also we will have there, we're going to sort of print out a QR code that will direct people to our donation page. We'll have that at the event. And also we hope to place at least one at the Hasbrook House for during the Design Connection, and then have a second one the following weekend at Rough Draft. Have another table at Rough Draft potentially. That I don't think has been fully confirmed, but that's what we're hoping for at this point. So as of right now, for the October 9th event, which is from 12 noon to 8 p.m., Julie Whalen has signed up for a 2-hour slot. I have signed up for a 2-hour slot. I know we have lots of other remaining time. Omari has signed up. Anyone who is in town, don't worry about overlapping. I think it's perfectly wonderful and fine if we have 2 people. I know at least one of you, Bartek, will be out of town. But if anyone else is in town and can participate and sit at the table, and we may also at that table just sort of talk a little bit or have information about the upcoming openings, 2 openings for new board members, just sort of trying to continue to raise profile and awareness and connection to people. One of the things that did come out of our meeting, which is sort of a new thing for board members in general, which might is that the land bank, when it first started, was very, and it continues to be very much a working board, people putting in a lot of time. We are, now that it's we're heading in a direction where there is an avenue that rehabilitation, development of homes, all of that is being established, that it is appropriate to start moving toward board members starting to think beyond just the sort of work directly in front of us and to how we can contribute financially. And so, if everyone, certainly there's no, it's not a requirement whatsoever, but if everyone could start to think about how to contribute financially to the land bank, I think this helping reach this $30,000 goal is one really great way to initiate that. For example, Serena recognizing an opportunity to connect us with the foundation. For myself, I will be making a donation and then asking my friends to, consider donating as part of their year-end giving. All of these things that I think all of us can, it's not resting on everyone's shoulders to pony up and give their own dollars, because we are all obviously giving of our time right now. And but if we could all just start sort of thinking in everything that we do, how we can make connections between different organizations and different entities, and see opportunities to start bringing in funds to help support the land bank and our goals. So that's my pitch for that for right now. One of the things Julie is working on is establishing the GiveGab platform. She has a lot more experience in terms of, or has a lot of experience in terms of setting up websites. And so apparently it is very much the same thing. I don't know, which is why we're relying on another person to do it. So she is going to be working on establishing that. And one of the components of GiveGab that I've always thought was really great is that within that platform, each board member, as an example, can have their own page, their own fundraising page, to send out a link to people that they know or to post on social media, all to sort of, again, help drive funds for people who are, considering year-end giving or other giving times in their lives. So you will probably be receiving emails about that at some point in the near future, just sort of encouraging people to think outside the box about how to start supporting the organization financially. And really this is a big part of the land bank diversifying where funding comes from. And I think that's ultimately the most important thing, that while Novo is incredibly generous, and we were very fortunate to get the enterprise grant, and I know there's the Legacy Cities grant that is being pursued, it's incredibly important to have a diverse base of monies coming in. And so individual donations is a huge part of that. So I think we all just need to start thinking of that in that vein. In the meantime, if anyone has time on October 9th, if you could, Omari, have you been the keeper so far of a schedule for that day?
Yeah, I just put it in the chat, just like,
Oh, thank you.
just 2-hour blocks. So I think, Aneshka has already volunteered and said any time slot, Karen, myself. So if anyone has any specific time slot that they would prefer, you can let me know, and then I can build the schedule around that.
Can I ask a quick question?
Please.
Thanks you guys for talking about this. And Omari, if you know sort of what slots are missing, let me know. Oh, so one question was, we should let you know specifically about signing up.
Yeah, I think that'd be helpful.
Okay. Two, just that like we're actually asking people for money, right?
Yeah.
Do you all feel like, I'm just curious, do people on the board feel comfortable asking people for money, or is like a mini how to ask for money kind of like training thing before that helpful? I love asking for money. It's I know not everybody likes to do that. So if there's like a little mini training that feels like it would make people more comfortable, I'm offering I could help with that. If not, totally fine. If everyone's like, I'm like, that place, that grocery store sells crackers for $15. Anyone who's
Right.
in that store should be giving us money, and I am happy to ask.
Alana, I literally have like glee rising up through my through my body. That would be fantastic if you would like to lead something like that, because
Yeah, that would be great.
I'm perfectly comfortable asking people that I know and putting it out on my social media. But yeah, that would be absolutely wonderful. Do you want to follow up after and we can talk about how to do that?
Yeah, that's sure. Totally.
Thank you. That'd be awesome. Anyone else?
I have like 3 things to add.
Great.
Okay, number 1, thank you to Mike for getting us registered on the bigbadamazon.com as a charity. So you may know, if you go to smile.amazon.com, I think 0.5% of your purchase or something goes to the charity of your choosing. You can now sign up for that charity to be the Kingston City Land Bank. So I have
Awesome. Thanks, Mike.
an Amazon user, even occasional. Do it up. It's a good thing. Thank you to Erica also for moving very swiftly to set up a Square account for us. So this will make taking credit card payments really, really easy at these events. And I think is a very good thing to have set up. And then the third thing, to incentivize giving at this event, there is a donor who wants to offer a $5,000 matching donation. We can't call it's not a grant, it's a donation. But donations up to $5,000 will be matched. This donor wants to remain anonymous, but I think it's a really cool thing. And so donations get doubled if we bring in money during this weekend of October 9th. So
Is that only for that weekend, Daniel? Just to be clear on the terms.
Honestly, let me clarify, but I think it's actually through the end of the year to help us meet that goal. But let me find out. This is news. So
Fantastic
we
news.
just have to go ahead that they're totally doing it. We just need to figure out some details. But
Matching gifts are wonderful.
people to open their pocketbooks. So that's that.
Anything else? Well, I just want to say, just having that little experience with half the board was really fun and so inspiring. And I'm so sad to not be working with you all going forward in the new year. And I'm sure I'll say something similar a few more times before I leave, but it's true this time, and I'm sure the next time I say it. So thank you.
A lot of things could go wrong between now and then, you know, let's not get ahead of ourselves. Sorry, Bartek, communications.
Okay. Potentially there's some background noise. So sorry about that. So we discussed a few things this month. First is, now that we have, hold on one second.
So anyway, maybe let's jump to governance and come back. Does that work?
Sounds fine to me.
Okay, let's do that.
Babies are important. Okay, so actually what we need to discuss most and have a kind of a tick off list of things that Bob and I put together that concern the election of new board members. So number one, I can obviously put these notes in the governance notes tonight. Number one, we would like everyone to take a look at these, and I think that you gave me sharing privileges, right, Mike?
Yes.
So these are the board directors' duties and responsibilities. We went through this last year when we elected new board members, or actually recruited new board members. So what I really would like everyone to look at is, you know, read these. I'll send them out to everyone, but really look at what these responsibilities are. Are there any responsibilities you feel need to be added in the new board recruiting cycle? And you know, let me know what they are, because these are the ones, these are the responsibilities that went out to the new members that we luckily were able to convince to work with us. So, and fiduciary responsibilities are indeed part of it. So I don't want to go, you know, spend time going through all of these, but I want you to really take a good look at them, because we are also going to consider, I'm going to stop sharing right now, that we want to look back at the process of adding new board members and talk about whether or not we were happy with that whole process. And what if there are any gaps that you noticed might be, and we can talk about it now, or you can email these to me and Bob, because we're going to put you know, this whole hiring cycle together. You know, the third item, so, you know, take a look at the board member responsibilities. Second thing is looking back at last year. Are you happy with the way that we put out the word to recruit new board members, etc.? And then the third thing is should we change the bylaws to add new board members in addition to a new process for board selection? Especially because, and this is number 4, we want to really keep an eye on economic, racial, and gender diversity. We need to recruit new members and outreach to the community with that in mind, and really we need creative ways to reach potential board members, right, that will actually satisfy those parameters. So the last time we did this, we put out a call, pretty wide call for new board members. And we need to actually do some personal, like, hey, are you interested? Kind of, people who'd be wonderful in these positions. And possibly, do we want a bigger board? So the personal outreach to community members could also include people who are expert at possibly raising funds, people who are in organizations like the Chamber, like the Junior League, like the Historical Society, the Rotary Club, who can link us to, donation pools of people. So widening both widening, and Bob warned me that if we do that, and we go to these very standard kind of wealthy Kingston nights, are they all going to be white? Right. So we have to be very careful about that. And yet, so the diversity of the board is still really, critical to our conversation. So all these pieces are part of how we recruit, right? And I think a lot of recruiting has to happen on a personal level. And finally, the 5th item, so we'll take these one at a time. Were we happy with the way that officers were elected last year? So these are all things we have to talk about and kind of put in motion by the next board meeting. So the governance committee is going to meet, but meanwhile, we're looking for input. As I said, I will put these, these and the board responsibilities in your email, so you can via email either give me responses or you can actually talk about it now. So we'll take number 1. Are you all familiar with the board member responsibilities? I think you all are. You had to read them, right? Should we discuss looking back on the new on the process of hiring new board members from 2020? Were we happy with that whole process? Do we want any discussion on that? Does anyone remember that whole process? Because it was quite complex. We did
sorry, I don't know if I can speak yet to that, but I think for me, just looking at kind of how the work has ramped up in this year, and kind of coupled with what you and Karen are both saying about wanting to step down from your positions, I just don't want us to bring new board members into a situation where they don't fully understand what the work is going to be, because I think from the requirements that are listed, it's like you get a sense of it, but like this is much more of a working board at this point than other boards I've been on, and so I'm just a little bit concerned or like wondering about that dynamic, because it seems like fundraising is definitely a part of what we want from board members, but really that kind of like, are we asking them to do more work? Because like even thinking about this event that we're going to do, I'm like, there's so much more. If I didn't have a full-time job I had to focus on, there's so much more that I would do to help bolster that, and so.
This is why the conversation of, you know, widening the members on the board, having more board members added. That was also what we would, again, the governance committee will talk about all of this, but we want you to be aware of the fact that we're thinking in that direction. And if you are all, in agreement with that, we would actually probably broaden the number of board members to get more at-large members, right? To add to the team, so that we also have team members who are expert at fundraising, etc., and are already members of possibly communities that have money, right? So this is how we're thinking about the board recruitment this round. I think it's a critical time. We now have a year of successes behind us, or at least when these people would start. And I think it's a perfect time to reconsider a lot of the way that we've been doing things to answer to the problems that have arisen, right? So, yeah, so thank you for that, Omari. And then, we will propose wording in the bylaws to change the bylaws once again, so that they can be possibly passed by the November board meeting, in time for hopefully enough of a recruiting window to add new board members, and of the kind that we are hoping for. Now, to put the ad out, Bartek, remind me, I know we put an ad out to just about every community organization and the media pipeline that we already have established. Do you remember? My brain is very fuzzy from last year. Do you remember how we did that? We did that in a pretty wide way, right?
You know what? To be honest with you, I don't remember anything about that the process for some reason. I know we received, I think it was about 25
yes
applications, if you will, but beyond that, my mind is blank. I would have to look back.
Okay. Yeah. I was actually surprised at the amount of candidates when I look back. So yeah, I think we pretty well, mined the organizations and put out the word to people we knew, people, in organizations, etc. But we have to do a much more concerted effort this time. And this question of like, do we broaden the board? Do we add more at-large members, etc.? This big question. Does anyone have input on that to discuss, or do you want to let us know after we have the governance meeting? Anybody have input on that right now? Yeah.
I have one input, is that, and I just brought this up super briefly in our executive board meeting, but I think that I've been asked by 2 different people, which is not a huge number, but it's a number of opportunities for working with the land bank that are not board level. And so we did at the exec board meeting talk about, I think that's where we talked about it, just sort of fine tuning the participation button on the website because I know that there are opportunities like for non-board member committee participants, and I know in some cases, Daniel and I have talked about, in some cases they have to actually be appointed to a committee, but there are other opportunities where maybe they don't have to be. Anyway, I think if there could be a simultaneous or maybe one after the other rollout of opportunities that, would engage more community members in committee work in ways that, don't have board level responsibilities, but still have the ability to engage and provide input. And then also have board member opportunities, you know, that are sort of deeper and much more time commitment involved. And if those could sort of be clearly identified and put out there.
And thank you for that.
So that was sort of my one point, but I think that broadening the number of board members, it would be great, you know, because so many of us are doing double duty and
Yeah,
so,
we're like on 2 or 3 committees.
yeah, so having more people at the party is great.
It also, just to note, would allow us, I think, to have bigger, we could have 5-person committees if we went to 11 members on the board. Worth considering. Or not everyone has to serve on multiple committees. Your choice.
Right. So, yeah, and then also there might be more creative ways, and this is why I'm putting it out to all of you, of recruiting people from other sort of brother sister organizations, not you know, like the Chamber, like the Junior League, Historical Society, and Rotary Club. But there's more, of course, who can link us to pools of people who have money. So that's, you know, those are the kinds of things that we're thinking. At the same time that we want to keep our feet firmly planted in the organization, that I mean, we are supposed to be a diverse grassroots organization, and the people who serve on the board should be from the community that we are addressing, right? But looking at our board right now, we are probably more middle class than the community that we are addressing. So middle class and white. So these are the kinds of considerations that you know, are very important in this conversation. So anyway, so I welcome your input on this. And then the very last question was, you know, were we happy with the way officers were elected last year? And if we can get some suggestions either now or via email of ways that you think officer elections could be run through a better process than what we did last year. I feel like we really railroaded and rammed the process through last year. It was very rushed. So maybe just more time for electing board members. Executive board members may be in order. Does anyone have any comments so far? So yeah, so I'll send these out. Please feel free to, you know, email me and Bob, because it's Bob and I that are putting this together. And then by October, we'll put out the call for new board members. Bob had some ideas to add to this idea of how Bob, do you still want to do that? Do you still want to
Sure,
give
I
a
can
little
be-
bit of a picture?
I'll be brief about one of the things that I want to look at. I think we ought to look at moving away from the charity model and moving toward the authority model. I mean, we are an authority. Ideally, in my view, we should get to the point where our activities, acquiring houses, stabilizing them, selling them, is self-sustaining and self-funding, so that we're not a charity. And I don't think our long-term survival, I don't think long-term charity is the right model for us. I mean, we're there now. That's exactly what we are now. And, you know, moving away from that over time, I think is an important thing for us to think about. So that's one thought I wanted to put in everybody's head. The second thing is when we talk about board members and we talk about there's conflicting things there. You know, having an old guard Kingston on the board would be useful and might be helpful, and we might benefit from that from a financial perspective as long as we're a charity. But it's going to be off-putting to the diverse community that we hope to address. And we don't want to be in a situation where where a potential board member is going to be put off by this whole fundraising and would have an obligation. I don't, that element of the community, as Aneshka points out, that those that are in that are the people that we hope to serve, we'd like to have on the board, but you don't want to be off-putting to them with requirements that are going to be uncomfortable for them to meet. So I think that's another thing to think about when we're looking at people that we might want to engage and might want to include in the board. So it gets to be complicated, I think, over time. The other thing when we talk about, and this goes to the mayor, the mayor's role in appointing board members, I don't know. I mean, it's probably a conversation that you might, or something you want to think about. Do you want us to continue that role? And that's really that's something you need to think about and let us know about whether that's the right thing for you or whether it's fine if it is, or, how do you feel about that? Those are my random thoughts about our new board member. And I didn't mention anything about officers. I think more time would be helpful in the officer selection adventure. So that's my 2 cents of our short governance conversation.
All right, thank you. That's all I have, Daniel.
Thank you. I would just urge also, as we're looking to place new board members, a particular focus, I think finding somebody who has a strong kind of finance or fundraising or both background is something we've talked about, sort of has been a difficult role to fill, and I don't know, keep an eye out. Okay, Bartek, sorry, I skipped and then now we're going back.
All right, no, great. All right, so a few things from this month. In our committee meeting, now that we have executed sales contracts for all 3 properties, we discussed basically not doing any marketing around the families until, we've discussed with that family, like, yes, please do a social media post on me. I'm comfortable with that, or do XYZ. Otherwise, before then, we need to be careful and tread lightly in terms of how we communicate who those individuals are. The other thing that we did this month is we sent out a survey to the 250 or so applicants for our Pilot 1 homes, encouraging them to provide feedback on the process. And I sent out a reminder today. Thus far, we've received 9 responses, which is up from 5 this morning. The responses are what I expected, which is that they're overwhelmingly negative about the process, which we know the experience was not great. And I think this fuels the overall feeling that we need to have a resource in-house to lead this process. But full results coming once they continue to trickle in. And then we're also supporting the event at the Kingston Standard with some graphic and communications work. I think that's all I wanted to mention from my end. Alana, Aneshka, or Serena, anything you wanted to add?
No, thank you for pulling all that together, Bartek. You're always wonderful about that.
I'm psyched we got 9 responses. I didn't think we were going to get any, so that's great to hear. Hopefully we can continue to get more.
Bartek, is there some sort of kind of preferred deadline for people to submit survey responses?
I didn't provide a deadline. I mean, it's.
Sorry.
Yeah, no, go ahead.
I was just going to ask, I think maybe for the next board meeting, if maybe you could kind of brief us on the basic strokes of what you're reading.
Yeah, definitely. And I'll probably send something along before then. At this point, the memory, I think, of the process is fading because it's been a few months already. So I'm probably going to give it another week or so.
Thank you. The other thing is, I don't think we've set a date, but on the horizon is a volunteer planting day at 64 Urine, which is done, and time to put some nice plants in the ground. So Martech has been working with our the Earth Designs Cooperative that did the clean out of 63 Germ. They're planning to provide discounted plants to us out of their nursery, which is very generous. So I think we just basically have to pick a date.
Yes, to be continued. Yep.
So bring your shovels, the Neshka pickaxe.
Oh, definitely, Neshka. I'll reach out to you first.
Cool. Thank you. Design committee, real fast. We have been meeting with KDA, Christina Dowersham Architecture. They are wonderful by my evaluation. We're having a good time, a pretty seamless design process. So essentially, this is all obviously kind of an experiment and just trying to figure out the best composition of how this is going to work. But I think they've been really helpful at helping us figure out kind of process and possible ways that we can work with contractors more effectively and more cost effectively. So that's exciting. We basically did kind of like an initial design round where the committee members, which is really just me and Jess, who has kind of taken the lead on 149 Greenkill, kind of submitted basic plans of here's kind of our idea to try to cut down on that billable hours with the architects trying to figure out where to move walls. Here's a solid draft, throw it away or use it. They did basically use it, so that's really cool. So they got design plans out really pretty quickly. We've done one round of revisions. We're doing a lot of owner supplied like fixtures and finishes this time around. We didn't do that the first time, and honestly, for me and probably Mike and Owen, it's been a real pain. So I think this is going to make things a lot easier and a lot cheaper. So yeah, going well. We expect timing has been more or less within a week of what we planned, and it's going swimmingly. So hopefully to more beautiful houses on the way. I think that's that. We still have no members of the public, so I'll skip the public comments. I don't think I really have any new business that hasn't been covered. Mike, anybody else have new business? Sorry, my dog is making a bed in an IKEA bag over there. So that's the noise. All right. Well, with that, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Happy birthday once again, Daniel.
Thank you.
I motion to adjourn.
A second.
Second.
All in favor of adjournment? Opposed? Abstain? Motion passes. I think unanimously. Thank you, everybody. Have a terrific night and month, and hopefully I'll see some of you at the Standard on the 9th.
Yay.
Right,
Get in touch with Omari.
Right, go eat cake.
Happy birthday.
Thanks, guys.
Yeah.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.